How are you doing today? And welcome to segment 6 of Plato is Still Relevant Today, an annotated summary of Plato's Republic. Now today we are starting book 3. The Republic is 10 books. We're going to look at the goal of a balanced education. Notice the triangle. This is my seesaw. Poetry's on one side, gymnastics is on the other, and it's balanced, and they head up to reason. We're going to explain this. We're going to look at how Socrates goes about arguing certain stories should be censored. We'll defend him. We'll look at the notion of temperance and the notion of imitation. So let us begin. Book 2 ended with education. And we stated, many people have stated, that the Republic is the best book on education ever written. And the Republic spends 2 or 3 books within the book, chapters if you will, on education. I mean, if you're going to have a just society, you've got to bring up just people. But what does that mean? As a matter of fact, here's another guy, went to Oxford, became a British fellow. He argues, Professor de Burgh argues, the Republic is the best book on education ever written. So we've got de Burgh, we've got Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and I'll bring you others as we go on if you need academic names to support this sort of thing. But anyway, let's look. Look at this notion of a balanced education. The spirit, or poetry, is to develop the spirit. Poetry means music, literature, stories. Gymnastics means exercise, diet, and all the things that bring up the physical body. This poetry, this spirited part of ourselves, is kind of like our will. You know, I'm going to force myself to do this. But there's this third part, reason. Notice my statement, I'm going to force myself to do this. The I'm is this reason part. And this reason part is most interesting. Sometimes Plato calls it the deliberative part of the soul. Sometimes he calls it the contemplative. Sometimes he calls it the knowledgeable part. He never uses the same word twice because he wants to get at the experience. So if our spirit, our courage, and our body are balanced, reason can work to make this balanced psyche. This is the goal of education. And let's take this reason a step further. A balanced psyche, talking to other balanced psyches, achieves the dialectic. And we've been talking about the dialectic as opposed to debate. Look at Congress. Do you think we need the dialectic? But also, within your own psyche, if you're balanced, you can contemplate the forms, or you can reach up to the world of being as opposed to the world of becoming. And when you can get to the forms, you're in touch with all humanity. There's a mystic element to this. In the Meno, in the Phaedrus, in the Symposium, all 3 times Socrates is caught in the midst of a trance. There's a mystic element to this, a connection beyond oneself. So this balanced education is quite important. It's his whole goal through the next few chapters. Now, we will start with stories because we've got to get the spirit to come first. If this goes, the body will follow. If we celebrate the body first and the seesaw goes down this way, the spirit will just slide down here. Drug use is a good example. You know, or alcoholism, you fall into loving body sensations, it tips the seesaw, your spirit goes that way, and reason, nothing it can do to get the tipped seesaw back in order. So we need poetry and gymnastics balanced, and you got to start with stories, because the body will follow the spirit, but the spirit won't follow the body, and reason will just go off and be lost. So Socrates sees the stories we tell as very important. And it's kind of ironic because Socrates argues poetic stories are dangerous. They're persuasive, you know, rhymed and balanced stories whose meaning and tone go together. That's very persuasive. And we really don't want that. We just want straight, dull stories so people get the facts. But yet, ironically, if you read the Republic, it's rhymed and balanced, and what it says goes along with the rhythm of what's being said. So it is a little bit of irony. Poetic stories are dangerous, don't use them, yet here's Plato, a master at using poetry. So anyway, we've got to start out with stories that'll get our young people in the Republic, in our city of words, to honor the gods, honor their parents, and here's a big part: value the treating of each other. Once again, back to that dialectic. As I was reading in Professor de Burgh the last few days, he talked about the high point of Greece and how they treated slaves. That's pretty wild. At the high point of Greek culture, slaves were almost considered equal. And they, by persuasion, got the slaves to be slaves. You be a slave for a while, eventually you'll get your freedom. And then the slaves willingly accepted the yoke. As the society started to deteriorate, they treated the slaves with whips and force. As we are going to learn later, Plato says the same thing about education. Enforced education never sticks. Forced labor, do this or you're fired, is not the same kind of labor as, yes, I want to do this for you. That subtle attitude difference. So we want the stories to get these youngsters to want to be part of the Republic, to, you know, value the gods of the city, value their parents, and value each other. Problem number one, and we'll tell stories only that show this. Our next problem is we want, especially the leaders of our city, not to fear death, or at least lessen their fear of death. So we'll censor all these notions that Hades is evil. And remember, they've got to fear slavery even above death. And we've got to get them to understand that going into slavery, if you're a good man, it's better to die than to go into slavery. Yet, ironically, they treated their slaves very well. Constant balance. But isn't that how life is? Balanced. If it's not balanced, something is haywire. So we can't regard death as something harmful for a good man. And we don't want Achilles lamenting. No God. We don't want any God mourning his fate. No crying. You know, and once again, you can see where Socrates gets in trouble. He doesn't honor the gods of the city. Achilles can't cry. We don't want the gods lamenting, as in the stories of Homer, these gods lamenting their fate. You know, once again, just like in segment 5, it's we don't want to teach our kids in Sunday school how the Old Testament God was a tribal warrior God and ordered the Jewish people to do some pretty nasty things. You start preaching those things or teaching those things to the young, people get angry. Well, this is what eventually hurts Socrates, amongst other things. So we want no lamenting, and we don't want the people given to laughter either. We don't want people to be overly depressed or stupidly happy. Balanced. Balanced. And of course, truth must be highly esteemed by the citizens. Now he goes, you know, sometimes a doctor can tell a lie, give the patient a placebo, and the placebo works. If a lie is effective, the doctor can use the lie effectively to help the patient, it's a good thing. Well, likewise for the government. If the city government tells the people a lie that makes the people better, it's a good thing. But the citizens cannot lie. Not at all. Next, we've got to promote temperance in our city. That means to obey the rulers and to rule yourself. Remember, I'm going to force myself to do this. This reason, this deliberative part, is going to rule the poetry and gymnastics to keep a balance. Temperance is about ruling oneself and obeying the rulers of the city. All right, so in promoting temperance, again, back to our stories that we give to the young people, no anti-authority literature. Yet Socrates was tried and convicted for going against the authority of Athens. Again, ironic balance. Okay? We don't want Odysseus saying, the best thing in the world is a table brimming with wine. And Zeus's lust isn't any good either. It doesn't promote self-control. Okay. We want our kids, if we want our kids who are going to grow up to be the leaders of our country and our businesses above bribery, we can't sing that gifts move the gods. Oh, we hope this offering, you will see favor in this offering, O God. You know, these kind of statements. If you want our kids to be above bribery, we as a city can't be seen to be bribing God. So none of these sacrifices to the gods. Our poets who write stories must denounce evil and the doers of evil, and the gods in no way can be the origin of evil. Now, stories about people. The God stories are one thing. We just don't want any stories where the unjust get the better of the just. But as for the rest of the stories about people, we really can't get into just stories until we capture what justice is and what it naturally does for the soul. So let's look at the style of stories. And again, Socrates says no imitation. By imitation, he means we don't want the author of the story to pretend like he's the speaker in the story and tell the whole story through the speaker. That would be imitation. You know, kind of like Plato being Socrates and telling his whole story as though he's Socrates. Here we go again. Socratic irony. But imitation can't be. As a matter of fact, he goes, a totally worthless fellow imitates others. Totally. His whole speech is in imitation. And we can't have our kids, you know, imitating Slavish acts. We can't have our kids imitating maniacs. You know, you can't present yourself as if you're someone else. Think of a shoemaker. You know, you got the toga and the sandals, okay? You're a shoemaker. At first you imitate. To learn how to make shoes, yeah, there's some imitation at the beginning. But then eventually, after working, current wisdom is 10,000 hours of work, you become a master. Well, Plato argues you could see the form shoe. And you see a piece of it. Like, here's the form shoe. You look at it from here, you see this angle. At this point, you rise above the standard of shoemaking. You see the form, and you're making the shoe the way you see best. You become an innovator. You become uniquely you in your shoemaking. And I think when he's talking about imitation in storytelling, he's saying to these kids, if the kids see imitation storytellers, they won't learn the point of education. And that's to rise above standards. Because people that don't see this, that always imitate, are always trying to match the standards other people set up for them. But if you can rise to reason, take your reason to contemplate the forms, then you've risen above the rules and regulations put before you in a very healthy and positive way. No imitation, I think, is incredibly important to understanding Plato's Republic. And that is all for segment 6. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you see how Socrates is still relevant in your everyday life.